By the time the bank investigator closed the file, the 71-year-old woman sitting across from him already knew the truth. Not because he told her, but because the pattern was too perfect to be accidental. $200,000 gone, taken by the one person she trusted most in the world, her own daughter. For 43 years, Patricia Campbell had been a nurse. Not the kind you see in movies, no dramatic emergency room scenes, no life or death decisions made in seconds. Just steady, reliable work, tracking vitals, noticing patterns, catching problems before they became crises. That's what made her good at her job. She noticed things. So when she retired quietly at 68, without ceremony or celebration, she carried those same habits into her personal life. She tracked her money the way she once tracked heart rates and blood pressure. Dates, amounts, changes, trends. Every expense logged, every balance verified, everything accounted for. She wasn't wealthy, but she was careful, and careful people don't lose $200,000 by accident. But here's where it gets strange. Patricia's health had started slowing her down about a year after retirement. Nothing catastrophic, just the normal wear of 7 decades, arthritic hands, fatigue, the occasional memory fog that made banking feel more complicated than it used to. So when her daughter, Rebecca, offered to help manage some of the financial tasks, it felt reasonable. Temporary access to one account, just to handle bill payments, just until Patricia felt stronger. Rebecca had always been responsible, or so it seemed, a single mother working 2 jobs, struggling but surviving. Patricia wanted to help her, trusted her completely. The first time Patricia noticed something wrong, it was small, $300. She was reviewing her monthly statement, something she still did religiously, and saw a withdrawal she didn't remember making. But here's the thing about small amounts, they're easy to dismiss. A fee she forgot about, a payment she made while distracted, her memory playing tricks? She was 71 after all. Maybe this was just age. So she let it go. That was her first mistake. 3 months later, it happened again. This time, $800. Categorized as household expenses in the transaction log, but Patricia couldn't remember any household expenses that large. She mentioned it to Rebecca during one of her visits. "Oh, Mom, remember? That was for the plumber, the leak in your bathroom?" Patricia didn't remember a leak, but Rebecca's voice was calm, confident, completely unbothered, and that confidence did something to Patricia's doubt. It made her feel foolish for even asking. This is what manipulation looks like, by the way. Not aggressive, not obvious, just confident enough to make you question your own memory. Patricia had seen this technique before, actually. In hospital rooms when family members would gaslight patients about their own symptoms, speak with enough authority, and doubt feels like weakness. She wanted to believe Rebecca, so she did. But the withdrawals didn't stop. They kept coming. Sometimes $500, sometimes $1,000, sometimes more. Always with explanations, always categorized carefully, always just plausible enough. And here's what made it brilliant. Because yes, this was strategic. The amounts were never so large that Patricia would panic, never so frequent that the pattern would scream at her. Just enough to stay under the radar of alarm. This wasn't chaos. This was calculation. What finally broke through wasn't anger. It wasn't even suspicion. It was something much colder, professional instinct. One afternoon, Patricia was sitting at her kitchen table with 6 months of bank statements spread out in front of her. She'd printed them without fully knowing why, just a nagging feeling she couldn't name. And then she saw it. Not one transaction, not 2. The pattern. Withdrawals clustered around Rebecca's visits, amounts that escalated slowly, methodically, like someone testing boundaries. Transfers that always happened when Patricia was tired, distracted, or recovering from medical appointments. This wasn't random. This was someone who knew her schedule, her vulnerabilities, her routines. Someone who studied her the way a predator studies prey. Patricia felt something shift inside her in that moment. She stopped being a confused elderly woman. She became a nurse again. Clinical, methodical, detached. She didn't cry. She didn't call Rebecca screaming. She didn't fall apart. She began documenting. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia rebuilt the entire timeline. Every transaction cross-referenced with her calendar. Every withdrawal matched to Rebecca's visits. Every explanation Rebecca had given tested against the actual dates and amounts. She pulled records Rebecca didn't know she'd kept. Text messages where Rebecca had asked to borrow small amounts that were never paid back, never mentioned again. Voicemails where Patricia had questioned charges and Rebecca's voice was just a little too quick with answers. Bank permissions showing exactly when Rebecca had been granted access and how that access had been used far beyond what was agreed. The numbers told the story Patricia didn't want to hear. $37,000 in the first year, $68,000 in the second, $95,000 in the month since. Total, just over $200,000. Not at once, not in a way that triggered fraud alerts. Slowly, quietly, deliberately. But here's what made Patricia finally act, and this is important. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what the pattern revealed. This would never stop. Rebecca wasn't desperate. She wasn't in crisis. She was strategic. And if Patricia stayed silent, this wouldn't be a one-time betrayal. It would be a permanent arrangement. Patricia didn't confront Rebecca. That might surprise you, but think about it. What would a confrontation accomplish? More explanations, more manipulation, more gaslighting? Instead, Patricia did something much more effective. She went to the bank. Not as a confused elderly victim, not asking for help understanding her statements. She walked in with documentation, with timelines, with evidence organized the way she used to organize patient charts. Clear, comprehensive, undeniable. I need to report theft, and I need to revoke access. The bank investigator's face changed as he reviewed her materials. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was a crime. Within 48 hours, Rebecca's access was revoked. Within a week, the bank's fraud department had opened a formal investigation. Within 2 weeks, law enforcement was involved. Patricia called Rebecca 12 times that first day after her access was cut off. Patricia didn't answer. The voicemail started apologetic, then angry, then desperate. "Mom, there's been a mistake. Mom, you're confused. Let me explain. Mom, you're going to destroy our family over this." But Patricia had spent 40 years caring for people who tried to minimize their own symptoms. She knew denial when she heard it. And she knew that enabling destructive behavior wasn't love, it was cowardice. The legal process unfolded exactly the way systems do when evidence is overwhelming. Charges were filed, accounts were forensically audited. The pattern Patricia had documented was confirmed by professionals. Some of the money was recovered, not all of it. Most was spent on things Rebecca never disclosed, but enough to matter. Rebecca tried to fight it at first, hired a lawyer, claimed misunderstanding, claimed Patricia had approved everything, claimed this was elder abuse of a different kind, a daughter being persecuted by a vindictive mother. But the evidence didn't care about the story she told. The math was the math. What surprised people most, neighbors, old colleagues, even the prosecutor, was Patricia's composure. No tears during depositions, no angry outbursts, no visible grief, just calm, factual testimony. People whispered that she must be cold, heartless. How could a mother do this to her own daughter? But they didn't understand. This wasn't about revenge. It was about stopping a pattern before it consumed someone else. Patricia lives alone now in a smaller apartment. The money she recovered helps, but her retirement looks different than she had planned. Quieter, more careful. She doesn't talk about Rebecca to people who ask, doesn't justify her decision or soften it with qualifications. Because here's what Patricia understood that most people don't. Love and accountability aren't opposites. Real love doesn't protect wrongdoing from consequences. Real love doesn't sacrifice justice for comfort. Real love says, this behavior ends here. even if it costs me everything. Patricia didn't act because she stopped loving her daughter. She acted because she loved herself enough to refuse exploitation. And because she knew, with the certainty of someone who spent a lifetime watching patterns, that silence wouldn't protect Rebecca. It would only teach her that betrayal works. The last time someone asked Patricia if she regrets turning in her own daughter, she gave the same answer she'd given dozens of times. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing what was necessary. Some lessons, even the hardest ones, must be enforced, not for revenge, but so the truth doesn't keep repeating itself. That pattern Patricia recognized, those small withdrawals that escalated slowly, that's exactly how financial elder abuse usually works. It's not dramatic, it's methodical.
And if this story made you think differently about trust, boundaries, or family dynamics, let me know in the comments. What would you have done in Patricia's situation? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.